There are faces from our childhood that feel less like actors and more like family. They were welcomed into our living rooms, week after week, their stories becoming a part of our own. For a generation that grew up in the warm glow of the first television sets, there was no face more familiar, no bond more pure than that of a boy and his dog. In today's video, we'll explore the story of Tommy Rettig. The boy who was Jeff Miller is not the simple bedtime story you remember. It's a far more complex, heartbreaking, and ultimately inspiring tale about the crushing weight of fame, the search for an identity, and the extraordinary power of a person to reinvent themselves, not just once, but over and over again. To understand Tommy, you have to understand the world that created him. He was born in 1941, a child of the Great Depression, who came of age in the booming prosperity of post-World War II America. This was the era of the baby boom, of burgeoning suburbs, and of a powerful new force taking over the American home, the television. Families gathered around its flickering screen, hungry for entertainment that reflected their values, or at least the values they aspired to. They wanted to see strong, wholesome families, clear-cut morality, and a world where problems could be solved in under 30 minutes. It was into this cultural moment that Thomas Noel Rettig, a gifted young boy from Queens, New York, stepped onto the stage. He wasn't from a showbiz family. His father was an aircraft parts inspector. But from a young age, it was clear Tommy had a natural talent. He was performing on stage by the age of 6, and by the time he was 9, he was a seasoned professional, touring with Mary Martin in the musical Annie Get Your Gun. Hollywood soon came calling, and unlike many child actors who fade after a few small parts, Tommy's star ascended with breathtaking speed. He had an intelligence and a sensitivity in his eyes that casting directors loved. He could convey a world of emotion with just a glance, making him perfect for the dramatic roles of the 1950s. His big break came in 1953 with a film so bizarre, so surreal, it has since become a cult classic. The 5,000 Fingers of Dr. T was the only feature film ever written by Theodore Geisel, better known as Dr. Seuss. It was a strange fever dream of a musical about a young boy forced into a fantastical prison camp where his tyrannical piano teacher makes 500 boys practice on a single mile-long piano. The film was a box office disaster, too strange and dark for audiences of the time. But in the middle of all the Seussian madness was Tommy, giving a grounded, believable performance that anchored the entire film. He held his own against veteran actors and proved he was more than just another cute kid. He was a genuine talent. He went on to work with some of the biggest names in Hollywood. He played Richard Widmark's son in the tense thriller The Jackpot. He was the Native American boy, Little Beaver, in the Western series The Last Outpost. He even shared the screen with Marilyn Monroe and Robert Mitchum in the classic adventure film River of No Return. By the age of 12, Tommy Rettig had built a resume that most adult actors would envy. He was earning a staggering $2,500 a week, a fortune at the time, and was the primary breadwinner for his entire family. But all of that was just a prelude to the role that would define his life, for better and for worse. In 1954, a new television series was being cast based on the beloved 1943 film Lassie Come Home. The producers were looking for the perfect boy to play Jeff Miller, the loyal owner of the heroic collie. They auditioned over 500 boys for the part. But when Tommy Rettig walked in, they knew their search was over. He had the perfect combination of boyish innocence and emotional depth. When he was on screen with Lassie, the connection felt real, because it was. He loved animals, and his genuine affection for the dog shone through in every scene. Lassie premiered on CBS on September 12, 1954, and it was an instant phenomenon. It captured the heart of the nation. The show was the perfect televised fantasy of rural American life. Jeff, his widowed mother Ellen, and his grandfather Gramps lived a life of simple virtues on the Miller family farm. And at the center of it all was Lassie, the preternaturally intelligent collie who wasn't just a pet but a member of the family, a guardian angel with 4 paws who could solve any problem, rescue anyone from danger, and understand human emotion better than most humans. For 3 seasons, from 1954 to 1957, Tommy Rettig was Jeff Miller. To millions of children, he was the friend they wished they had. To millions of parents, he was the son they wished for. He received thousands of fan letters a week. He couldn't walk down the street without being mobbed. He was, by every measure, one of the biggest child stars in the world. But behind the idyllic scenes of life on the farm, a different story was unfolding. The life of a child star in the 1950s was one of immense pressure and relentless work. Tommy's days were a grueling marathon. He'd spend hours in the studio school trying to cram in a normal education between takes. Then he'd be on set, expected to deliver a perfect performance, scene after scene. He had to hit his marks, remember his lines, and most importantly, act opposite a dog, who was, in reality, the true star of the show. There wasn't just one Lassie, but a team of them, mostly male dogs, trained by the legendary Rudd Weatherwax. While Tommy's on-screen bond was with a fictional character, his off-screen reality was working with a highly trained and highly valuable animal performer. The financial pressure was also immense. His earnings supported his parents and his younger sister. He was a child carrying the weight of adult responsibilities. He later recalled that while he was grateful for the opportunity, he always felt like he was living someone else's life. He didn't have a normal childhood. He didn't get to just go out and play with friends. His life was dictated by shooting schedules and publicity tours. He was a professional, a commodity, a brand. The studio owned his image, his time, and his identity. One of the few sources of genuine comfort he had on set was his on-screen mother, the wonderful actress Jan Clayton. Jan was a Broadway veteran with a powerful maternal presence, and she took Tommy under her wing. She saw the sensitive boy behind the professional actor and became a true mother figure to him. Their bond was deep and real, a lifeline for Tommy in the artificial world of Hollywood. But Jan's own life was marked by unimaginable tragedy. In 1956, while Lassie was at the height of its popularity, her 18-year-old daughter was killed in a horrific car accident. The cast and crew rallied around her, but the light in her eyes dimmed. For Tommy, seeing the woman who played his perfect TV mom endure such a profound and real-world sorrow was a stark lesson in the fragility of life. A brutal contrast to the simple problems that Lassie could always solve. By the time he was 14, Tommy was changing. His voice was getting deeper. He was shooting up in height. He was no longer the little boy who first found Lassie. The producers knew they had a problem. The show's premise depended on the bond between a young boy and his dog. So in 1957, after 116 episodes, the decision was made. The Miller family would sell the farm and move to the city, and Lassie would be left behind with a new family and a new boy named Timmy. Just like that, Tommy Rettig's time as Jeff Miller was over. He was given no real say in the matter. One day he was the star of a hit show, the next he was written out. At 16, with his television contract finished, he was set adrift. He thought his fame and talent would lead to a seamless transition into adult roles. He was wrong. The ghost of Jeff Miller haunted him. Casting directors couldn't see him as anything else. He was typecast, frozen in time as the wholesome farm boy. The very role that had made him a household name had now become a cage. He managed to get a few guest spots on other TV shows, playing troubled teens or young cowboys, but the roles were sporadic. He was a teenager trying to find himself like any other, but he had to do it in the public eye, constantly being compared to the perfect child he once played. He enrolled in University High School in Los Angeles, hoping for a taste of normalcy. But how can you be a normal kid when everyone in the hallway is whispering, "Hey, that's the kid from Lassie"? He felt isolated, an outsider. He once said in an interview, "I was trying to be a normal teenager, but I wasn't. I had never been." The sweet, compliant boy from the show began to feel a growing sense of resentment and rebellion. He was tired of being Jeff. He wanted to be Tommy. As the 1960s dawned, the cultural landscape was shifting dramatically. The clean-cut conformity of the 50s was giving way to the counterculture. A new generation was questioning authority, rejecting materialism, and searching for new ways of living. For a young man like Tommy Rettig, who felt chewed up and spit out by the Hollywood machine, this new philosophy was incredibly appealing. It offered a path away from the phoniness he had grown up with, a chance to find something real and authentic. So, he made a radical decision. He turned his back on Hollywood completely. He took the money he had left, which was far less than you might imagine after agents, managers, and family expenses, and he moved his own young family. He had married at 18 to a farm near San Luis Obispo in Central California. It was an almost poetic echo of his television life, but this time it was on his own terms. He wanted to live off the land, to raise his children away from the pressures of fame, to build a life that was genuine. He embraced the hippie movement, growing his hair long and immersing himself in the burgeoning world of alternative lifestyles and Eastern spirituality. He co-founded a commune called the U.S. Male, a clever pun on the idea of deconstructing traditional masculinity. For a while, he seemed to have found the peace he was looking for. He was no longer Jeff Miller, the TV star. He was just Tom, a farmer, a husband, a father, a seeker. But this search for a new identity led him down a dangerous path. Like many in the counterculture, he began experimenting with drugs. And he didn't just use them. He began growing and selling marijuana. In his mind, it was an act of rebellion against the system, a way to support his chosen lifestyle. But the law saw it differently. In 1972, his idol came to a crashing halt. He was arrested for marijuana cultivation. The headlines were brutal. Lassie's boy in pot bust. The wholesome image he had tried so hard to escape was now being used against him, twisted into a story of a fallen child star. One of the most revealing aspects of his new career was his passion for helping others. He became a powerful advocate for programmers' rights and was a pioneer in what would later be called the open source community. He believed that knowledge should be shared freely. He spent countless hours on early online forums like CompuServe, patiently answering questions from novice programmers, sharing code, and offering encouragement. He remembered what it was like to be lost and to have someone extend a helping hand. He was paying it forward, building the kind of supportive community he had longed for his whole life. A former colleague of his from the tech world once shared a story that perfectly captures this. He said that when he first started working with Tom, he had no idea about his past. To him, Tom was just a brilliant, if slightly eccentric database guru. One day, he casually mentioned the name Lassie and saw a flicker of something in Tom's eyes. When he later found out who Tom was, he was stunned. He asked him why he never talked about it. Tom simply said, "That was a different person, in a different life." He wasn't ashamed of his past, but he refused to be defined by it. The years that followed were a chaotic spiral. He was convicted and spent time on probation. He struggled with harder drugs, including cocaine. His marriage fell apart. He was adrift. a man in his 30s who felt like his life was already over. He had been a famous actor, then a hippie farmer, and now he was a convicted felon. He had tried to escape one box only to find himself trapped in another, much darker one. He hit rock bottom. And it was there, in the depths of his despair, that the most remarkable chapter of his life began. In the late 1970s, looking for a way to get his life back on track, Tommy took a job as a salesman. The company was using a new tool to manage its data, a personal computer. This was long before Apple and Microsoft were household names. Computers were mysterious machines, mostly used by hobbyists and big corporations. But for Tommy, something clicked. He was fascinated by the logic, the order, the endless possibilities hidden inside this beige box. It was a world away from the emotional chaos of Hollywood and the unstructured life he had been living. It was a world built on rules, where if you typed the right command, you got a predictable, correct result. With the same intensity he had once applied to acting, Tommy threw himself into the world of computing. He was completely self-taught. He read every manual he could get his hands on, spent countless nights learning programming languages, and joined early online bulletin boards to connect with other enthusiasts. He discovered he had a brilliant, logical mind, a natural talent for understanding complex systems. He started with a simple motivation. He was part of a support group, and he wanted to write a program to manage the group's mailing list. It was a small, practical problem, but solving it ignited a passion that would redefine his entire existence. He began working as a computer consultant, and his reputation grew quickly. In the burgeoning tech scene of the early 1980s, talent was everything. And your past didn't matter as much as what you could create. No one cared that he was Jeff from Lassie. They cared that he could write clean, efficient code. In 1982, he got a job at a small software company called Ashton Tate. The company had a database program called DBase2 that was popular but notoriously difficult to use. Tommy became one of its leading experts. He didn't just use the software, he understood it on a fundamental level. He co-authored several books on DBase that became industry Bibles, known for their clarity and insight. His rise in the tech world was meteoric. He became a celebrated author, a sought-after public speaker at tech conferences, and a respected software developer. He was a key member of the team that developed the next generation of the software, DBase 4. For those who don't know the history of personal computing, this is like saying a silent film star suddenly became a key architect of the Golden Gate Bridge. It was an almost unbelievable transformation. He found a community that valued his mind, not his face. He had finally found a place where he could be Tom Rettig, not just an ex-child star, but even as he found success and fulfillment in this new world, he never completely forgot the lessons from his past. In his later years, he began to speak out, not with bitterness, but with wisdom. He became an advocate for other child actors, working to protect them from the kind of exploitation he had experienced. He also became a vocal anti-drug activist. Having seen the damage drugs had done to his own life and to the lives of many in his generation, he spoke with the raw, honest authority of someone who had been to hell and back. It was a stunning reversal for the man who was once arrested for growing marijuana. It showed his capacity for growth, his ability to learn from his own mistakes and use that knowledge to help others. He made peace with his past, even with Lassie. He attended memorabilia shows, signed autographs, and spoke warmly about his time on the show. He understood that Jeff Miller was a part of him, a part of a shared cultural history, and that he could acknowledge that past without letting it define his present. He reconnected with his Lassie co-star John Provost, the boy who had played Timmy after him. The two former child stars who had walked such similar yet different paths formed a deep friendship, united by an experience that few others could ever understand. In 1996, at the age of just 54, Tommy Rettig died of heart failure. His death was a shock to both the Hollywood community that remembered him as a bright-eyed boy and the tech community that knew him as a pioneering mind. The obituaries that ran were a study in contrasts, struggling to reconcile the two halves of his extraordinary life. Was he Jeff Miller, the iconic child star, or was he Tom Rettig, the database guru? The truth, of course, is that he was both, and so much more. The legacy of Tommy Rettig is not a simple cautionary tale about the perils of child stardom. To see it only as that is to miss the most powerful part of his story. His life was a testament to the human capacity for reinvention. Most people are lucky if they get one successful act in life. Tommy Rettig had 3. He was a beloved actor who helped define the optimism of an era. He was a counterculture rebel who searched for truth outside the mainstream. And he was a brilliant tech pioneer who helped build the foundations of the digital world we live in today. His story forces us to reconsider what it means to be a success. Is it fame? Is it money? Or is it the courage to walk away from a life that isn't working and build a new one from scratch? Tommy's journey was messy, painful, and full of mistakes, but it was also authentic. He refused to be a museum piece, a relic of a black and white past. He kept learning, kept growing, and kept searching for his own truth, long after the spotlight had faded. Perhaps the most enduring lesson from his life comes from a quiet quote he gave late in life. When asked to reflect on his incredible journey, he didn't talk about fame or technology. He simply said, "All I've ever really tried to be is a good man." In the end, the boy who played the perfect son on television spent his entire adult life on a complex, difficult, and deeply human quest to become a good man in the real world. And in his struggle and his ultimate triumph of self-definition, he achieved a kind of heroism that Jeff Miller and even the magnificent Lassie could never have imagined.